Okay, so for the next lesson, we're going to talk about what I refer to as what are called segment effects, what Avid used to call segment effects, but now is calling filters. And so we're going to look at some segment effects, and segment effects are in here in the effect palette. And you'll see that segment effects exist as what are called filters here. And these filters are things that exist inside of Avid that Avid has access to, and there's different categories of different effects. Now, some of these you may see that also exist as transition effects. So if you went to transitions and looked at shape wipes, you would see shape wipes like circle wipe, etc. But you can also see here in filters that shape wipe exists here. We'll talk a little bit about the difference between those. Now, as opposed to transition effects that happen across a transition or happen across a cut point, segment effects or filters will happen across an entire length of a segment. So they will be as long as a segment is. So if we go to, say, grown-up table here, and we get this picture of grown-up table here, we can go to the image category and go to, say, the flop effect. If we wanted to take this, we could drag the flop effect onto this effect here, and we'd say grown-up table, and grown-up table would flip around. And now that's all that really effect does. That just flops that image around. And if there's any writing here, the writing would be backwards. If you could read this, it would be backwards. So if you have any of those effects, those would be, in fact, backwards. We're going to click on this and park right here. And now that this track is enabled and we are parked on it, we can hit the remove effect button, because there is a remove effect button, this little circle with a slash. And we can remove this effect from here. So we can do that. We can do a flip effect, which would flip this upside down. There you go. You have an upside down clip. Again, remove effect, and you'd have it there like so. And then totally a flop effect, which would flip this 100% backwards and upside down all over the place. And you can do that. And so some of that's kind of obvious of what that effect does and some of those things there. But some of these effects will have properties that we can adjust. So let's go to the image categories and let's look at something like maybe the color effect. And we could choose the color effect and we could say, let's apply the color effect on top of here. Now, the color effect, when it applies, it really does nothing. You see nothing really happen. Nothing really happened when this changed. The color effect, you'll see that there's a color effect and also a color correction effect. There's these two effects, one called color effect, one called color correction. And what's the difference between these two? Well, the color effect has existed for years and years and years. It's a really low-end, simple-based color correction control. It's before they even got into really advanced levels of color correction. Avid had this basic kind of what I sometimes call the Instagram level of color control. And so if we go into the effect editor, which we've looked at before, in here in effect mode, you'll bring up the effect editor and you'll see some of the controls that we have for the color effect. So there's a luma brightness and a luma contrast, a luma adjust. We can brighten this image up and we could contrast this image up and make it more intense or make it brighter but more intense. And you could see some of that. There's a little button here to invert this, to invert the lumen contrast, which you don't want to do, but you could do that there. We could reset this back to 0. And then there's a luma range, which you could kind of crush the white point and flatten this, crush the white point out so you lose some of the detail in the tablecloth here, or you could crush the black point and kind of adjust that and lose all the detail in the jackets, those kind of controls. So you have that. We'll just undo that, Command Z, and just bring that back to 16 by 235. So this is automatically doing, if you know about broadcast color ranges, this is actually crushing this down to 16 by 235, which would fall into broadcast range. So just applying this color effect to this layer is automatically kind of putting this into broadcast standards there. There's a gamma adjustment to pull up the mid sections of brightness. Those there like so. You also have some luma clips, which you can cut this off and cut off the brightness. Again, 235 by 16 is clipping this off. So it's doing a broadcast color space. A chroma adjust, a hue and saturation control. So you can take this and say, crank up the hue and make this, or change the hue and change the entire color scheme of this. Or we could undo and just bring this back to normal. And a saturation control, which we could saturate this up and have this be heavily saturated. This doesn't really have much saturation to it. It's kind of a dull image. Or we could reduce the saturation completely out and make this black and white. Now, there is some color correction presets here, but there isn't a traditional black and white effect. So we could go to my bins here and go to my Chad's awesome effects that I had here and drag in this color effect here. And this color effect is a black and white. And so now we have an effect that's permanently black and white. And so this would be a normal black and white that we could drag to another layer like this clip and say, hey, let's just throw a black and white on here. And then boom, it throws black and white on there and makes this black and white. That's an effect we can do. Again, if we park here and go to the effect editor or effect mode, you can see that we could take this black and white effect and we could maybe contrast the color gain up here. So we could color gain this up in the red and make this kind of a reddish, and then maybe bring the green up a little bit. If we brought the green up a little bit and then brought the blue down a little bit, let's see, bring the green down a little bit, we could have kind of a sepia tone there. I don't know what the exact numbers would be, but you'd have to kind of play. You can left and right arrow these and move these back and forth and kind of adjust this to get the right sepia tone. Maybe a little bit more contrast. you know, brighten this down a little bit. I don't know, something, get this looking very sepia. And we could drag this effect down here. And again, this would be a different effect to make this, whoops, let's click on the name here and call this a sepia and have a sepia effect here. So if you wanted that, you can make a sepia effect. And then again, you could drag this anywhere you want to and put this on any other layer as you needed to have that effect. Now, a couple things about this, about these adjustments here. You'll notice that I'm dragging this effect onto these other layers, so I'm dragging them here. There is also the option that if you are using the segment modes, which we've talked about earlier, either the segment modes, lift, override, or extract, splice in, this is a nice way to click on clips, and you can do a thing where you click on clips and then shift click on multiple clips, say this clip and that clip and this clip and that clip and all these other clips. And then you can double click the sepia and that would apply the effect to all of them, all of them. And they may not look the same because some of them are brighter than others. So the sepia may not work exactly the way you want it to, but you know, you get the idea there. Again, undo will undo that and we'll just get rid of that. But that's just the thing you can do. So if you click on multiple layers, and this works with traditional effects, not even just saved effects. So if you want to just take these and go to effect palette and go to image flop, you could flop all these around. So if there's a thing you want to do where you want to flop each of these around, you can do that. But you notice that these effects, again, either in here or in here, effect palette here, there's effects you can do that'll apply to the entire segment. So they will adjust the segment. Now, can they be keyframed? Well, of course they can. We could go here back to my bins of Chad's awesome effects here, and we could say, hey, let's take this black and white effect and let's put it on this clip right here, just for now. We'll take this black and white and we'll drag this black and white and we'll go here and we'll say, great, this is a black and white effect that goes across the entire segment. Here we go. And then if you go in the effect editor, you do have the controls for keyframes. Now, by default, transition effects, if you remember, will naturally have two keyframes, the beginning and an ending of the animation, unless you add more. So this has beginning and ending keyframe here and a keyframe here to begin and end the animation. Well, segment effects, when you park on the segment effects, they don't have keyframes at all. They're just there automatically. But that does mean that you could say, for example, you could say, let's have this start here. And it starts, you know, at the beginning of this shot here. We'll just go all the way to the beginning of the shot here. Sorry, let me go back to the effect editor. And we'll drag to the beginning of this shot. We'll click on this. We'll drag to the beginning of this. We'll add a keyframe. And we'll bring this back to fully in color. So instead of this being black and white, we'll just saturate this back to 0. So it's here at 0. Now you can't see it yet because it's part of the transition effect, but it's here in full color. And then here, maybe start here, it goes from full color, and then here to here, it drifts into black and white. So at this keyframe, we'll change this to black and white. And now you'll see that this will go from full color and drift out to black and white. So if we wanted to do with kind of a drift,
be interested in
full color, and then right here, here it's losing all the saturation and drift to black and white. So that would be keyframeable. That is something you could do to keyframe different clips on there like so.
Interested in.
He went on, he excelled in math.
And so you could make this kind of a black and white movement or kind of drift this into a black and white look. And so those are some things you could do with those effects. So any of the effects can be keyframed, but the transitions by default will have two keyframes. The segment effects or the filters will not have keyframes at all. They're yours to play with, and you can do as much keyframe adjustment as you wanted to do. So you do have some of those controls inside of there. So we can look at some other effects here that exist inside there. There's some different things. Now, we mentioned before that there's stuff like the shape wipes, and you're like, oh, a shape wipe, like a circle wipe. Well, what does that do when you just put it on a segment? Well, if you were to go here to this picture of Fidel here, you could take the shape wipe and put a circle wipe, and it just puts a circle around Fidel, and it just has a circle there. Now, is it keyframed? No. Is it going to expand out from the center? No, it's not going to do any of those things. It's just going to be there as a shape wipe, like so, and it doesn't have any of those controls. Now, can we keyframe it? Yeah, of course. We could keyframe it to move there and then, I don't know, reduce size, either foreground control and make it smaller, and then have it open up again, something like that. We could do that if we wanted to, save that as an effect. That's kind of silly. But, you know, the idea is there that we can make these somewhat smaller here. We'll take this and keyframe this, and take this one and make it a little bit smaller and have this be shrink down, you know, and you can get some playfulness in terms of there. So those are segment effects. Can you add a border of a softness there? Yeah, you can add some softness there to make it softer. Whatever you want to do, you could add that effect. Notice the weird thing about this is that naturally, by default, you can't just hit the delete key and delete the effect. You have to hit the remove effect button, and you have to have the track enabled to the remove effect button. However, if you are in effect mode and you do click on the effect, and so you are clicking the effect, you should be able to hit delete key and that will delete it. But that only works in effect mode. By default here, if you're not in effect mode and you're here, and you're not parting the effect, hitting the delete key would actually want to delete the track. I don't want to delete the whole track. I mean, I could, but wow, that's horrible. Undo, God help us. That's where the remove effect button comes in. But if you are in effect mode and you're just playing with the effect in effect mode and you're like right here, this is the rare occasion that the delete key will work. And the delete key exists and it does work perfectly fine there. So again, you have these different segment tools and you can explore them and play with them. There's some silly ones under the illusion effects category. There's stuff like the lightning effect. Ooh, yeah, we could grab the lightning effect on here and make lightning. Bam. Let's turn the eyepiece back on. And then we have lightning. And then there's all kinds of controls we can do to adjust the lightning color. Like here, we could change the different values of the lightning color. We could double click on this and bring up our own color, pink lightning, amazing. And change the width of the core and the width of the glow around this, make it bigger, whatever it may be. It's a cheesy effect, but we can do it. I mean, it exists. I just want to show it to you. It exists. We can do it. We can play with it. We have those abilities. They are there. Perfectly fine. So you'll see different effects, some of which are cheesy, some of which are there, but all these should work as segment effects. And so one of the nice things about this is these work with what are called expanding or elastic keyframes. And that means if you were to do some kind of animation, so say, for example, we took this color that drifts to black and white right here. And if we were to take this segment here and we were to trim this and make this longer, it's going to stretch out. By default, it's going to stretch out the animation. So right now the animation, and I don't even know if I cared where this was put. This is a keyframe at 0, keyframe at 217, and a keyframe at 711. So let's put this exact movements. Now, Avid does a weird thing, and I don't understand it, and I don't necessarily agree with it. It's very protective of you. It doesn't want you to do things accidentally, so you can't drag keyframes horizontally. That's always a weird thing. You couldn't drag keyframes left or right, and I always think, well, when Avid does something silly, my answer always is holding the Option key. And now you can drag keyframes horizontally and push this back to 2 seconds. And so now we'll just make this exactly 2 seconds. So 2 seconds into this, it's happening here. So it's color to color. And then from 2 seconds, let's drag this one here. Again, Option click, Alt key to drag this to 7 seconds. So this is a 5 second, from 2 seconds to 7 seconds. This is a drift. And so we'll do it there like there. Now, so if we go in here and we say trim, let's bring up the ripple trim, for example, and we say ripple trim, and we were to ripple trim this a little bit longer, what's going to happen is this ripple trim's longer. We didn't have the video selected, so let's select the video as well, so that ripple trim's a little bit nicer. As it ripple trims, we make this longer. So we'll make this 48 seconds, 48 frames, 2 seconds longer. As we make this 2 seconds longer, you will notice that, again, if we go in effect mode here, these keyframes are now off a little bit more. This is at 207, so you do the math. I don't know how long extra 2 seconds would expand the distance between this, since this is depends on how long it was originally versus this is now 803 as opposed to 7. It does the math. It works out the math to get the same animation you wanted to, except it does it longer. There's a way around that, but we'll talk about that when we get into something called advanced keyframes. But there is that just naturally by default, when you drag something longer, it just stretches out the animation. This is called elastic-based keyframes. And so the keyframes on segments are elastic-based there. You'll also notice, just as a detail, in here under Chad's Awesome Effects, it did put this as a menu item. Because I made a bin called Chad's Awesome Effects, and because I filled it with effects, here in the effects palette, it'll list them here as well. It's just kind of like your own little repository of different effects that you have that you can play with. So there's different segment effects you can add, and you can put different segment effects on things. And we saw that you could click on multiple layers here. You click on this one and this one and this one, and you could hit sepia, and you could go to bins, effect sepia, just to review. You can add that effect back on. We're going to undo and remove that, but that's there. One of the things you also can do is these blank spaces up top here, these blank areas up top, and you'll see there's a little cut here on this blank space between this portion and this portion. We accidentally put a cut here, which is no big deal. We can get rid of it if we need to. But these blank portions are actually not just blank, empty space. They actually are considered, Avid considers them layers. And by considering them layers, they consider them something I can adjust, something I can manipulate, something I can control. Well, one of the nice things you can do is you could say Control Y or timeline new sequence, a new video track, timeline new video track, and you can make another layer. And so we could say something like, we have in Chad's Awesome Effects, we have black and white. We could drag black and white and put black and white on top of here. And we could bring black and white on top of here. So now we have this other layer. We have this other layer called filler. This is what Avid calls this gray space. This gray space in here is called filler. Has this blank empty space called filler. And now we have this in total video, but then up on video track 3 up here, we have filler. So this is like the color version. This is the there. So this is like what Adobe will sometimes refer to as an adjustment layer. People always ask me about how do I add an adjustment layer. This is the equivalency of an adjustment layer. It's just a blank track. Now, if you really wanted to isolate this, you could say, oh, I only want this blank track to be from here over, in which case, maybe with these other tracks off, you could do an add edit and say from here over, whoops, sorry, don't mean to grab that. From here over, you could say this half of it is black and white. And now this half, you know.
An event like this to bring these.
So you can kind of section off adjustment layer areas just with the add edit, because you can add edit into the blank space. You could also section off an area where an adjustment layer like this could exist. Now, this portion is black and white. This portion is color. You could kind of separate these out here like so. Again, click on this. Yep, let's delete that. We'll get rid of it entirely. And so you have that there. But there are the ability to add different places over filler. So every time you add a new track, Command Y, it is basically like potentially adding a new adjustment layer. Can you put video on that layer? Obviously, you can edit video and you can stack video on top and have some level of compositing, but you can also have just blank, empty effects layers of just kind of putting effects on top of everything else. And then you have a nice little feature where you can just jump back and forth between effect on, effect off, effect on, effect off, and you have that kind of isolated out that way. So that's kind of cool. Let's get into some stuff with effects, because we have a bunch of stuff we can talk about. There's a bunch of whole room full of effects that you can manipulate and play with. So let's talk about some other ideas. Let's talk about the idea of nesting effects. So we're going to get into a weird idea here. Let's just pick a clip here, and I want to talk about this as an idea. We're going to take this clip of, let's see, we'll take clip B here. We're going to take this clip right here, and we're going to take clip B, and I'll just zoom in a little bit here. So we're just going to zoom in a little bit here. We'll just do command bracket and zoom in a little bit here. And so here in the zoom in, we're going to take this video layer here. Awesome, cool. I want to just really quickly, sorry, turn hiding on. Cool, hide that. Go. That way I have a zoom tool there. It was bothering me. So let's say we go here and we go here and we say, let's go to effect palette and let's add under the film effects, there's something called a 16:9 mask. Now, this footage is already in 16:9, so let's talk about what the 16:9 mask does as an idea, what it really is actually doing. We're going to drag the 16:9 mask on top here, and it puts bars on top. It makes it look more, widescreen, more widescreen. Now, this is already 16:9, so what is it really doing? Well, I'll show you. If you go to the effect palette here, you can see that this is reducing this by height to 75%. So before it was like this, 100% by 100%. It just took 25% off of this and cropped this in 75%. If this was SD video, that would look like some kind of 16:9 mask. That's all this effect does. It's there. You could actually change this to a different background color if you really wanted to, make this purple and have it like there. We don't want to do that, so we're going to leave this as 16:9 mask, or maybe we will. Maybe we'll go to 16:9 mask and we'll make this purple. We'll have a little purple bars over top and has a cropping with little purple bars, kind of more streamlined. This is more like almost, I guess, anamorphic or something. Like something, a lower, maybe not 16:9, but maybe a bigger mask at this point. Anyway, this effect has been around for a while, so that's why they call it 16:9 mask, even though most of us are already working with 16:9 video. You get my idea. Anyway, so we're going to go here, and I'm going to go to this Chaz effects bin, and we're going to change this to black and white. And when I drag the black and white effect, and actually we'll take this right here, we'll go in here, and we'll just change this, just to make this easier. We'll call this, this 16:9 mask, we'll call this purple bars. Purple bars. So we have a collection of effects called purple bars here, and we'll go here and we'll say, let's drag this black and white effect on top of here. And we drag the black and white effect, it eliminates the purple bars. And we go, oh man, I kind of wanted both. And so now we drag the purple bars back on top, and it says, hey, gets rid of the 16:9, gets rid of the black and white. So we drag the black and white on top, and we say, hey, cool, okay, black and white, great. That didn't do what I want to do. And we keep dragging this on here. And the reason why is because by default, Avid has chosen that when you drag an effect on top of another effect, it replaces that effect. It takes that effect, eliminates it, and replaces it with a brand new effect, which is kind of not what we want. We want to put a bunch of effects on here. So let's take a look at this as an idea. So we're going to go here. And the trick is, I think I talked about this before, when Avid does something silly or something that not the way you predicted it to, you probably should hold in the Option key, hold in the Alt key, and now we're going to drag this black and white effect on top of here. And now we're going to do a thing called auto nesting, which is where we drag this on top of here, and now we have both. We have the 60x9 mask and we have the bar. So dragged the color effect on top of the 60x9 mask like so. Now, this is out of order because what I wanted this to do was, when I did this, I wanted this to have this part of the screen be black and white, but I still want to keep my purple bars. I mean, why would I make purple bars if I didn't want to have purple bars, right? I mean, that would be logical. So here, what I want to do is I want to option drag this and put this on top of here. And it changes my purple bars to black and white bars because the black and white effect ended up on top of the mask, which is backwards. And so I can simply nowadays just drag this and change the order of this. And so now it's 6x9 mask on top of color effect, and that's the order that I wanted it to do. And say for something, I did something silly. Say, for example, I went to the illusion effects, and inside the illusion effects, I went to something like lightning. And I said, cool, I want the lightning to be on top of this. Now I'm going to option drag, alt click, and alt drag this effect on top. And this is going to auto nest this on top of here. But now it puts the lightning on top of the 60x9 mask, which is not what I want. So I'm going to do the lightning and say, okay, let's drag this underneath there. And then it drags it underneath the 60x9 mask, but it also drags it underneath the color effect. Man, keeping this wrong. In which case now I need to do 60x9 mask, color effect on the bottom, and then lightning there. So I can really see the lightning. I know the lightning is cheesy. I know we don't want to do the lightning. I'm using this as an example. Please don't judge me on this. Please don't write comments of like, yeah, it was a really dumb effect you put in there. I know it is. I'm just making a point that if you wanted to layer effects, you know, this works for example purposes. And so you have this there. So that is the idea of nesting different layers on top of other different layers to have this kind of organization. It's a weird idea, but it's kind of there. Now, I want to show you two other things that Avid does as a concept, as an idea. Well, I'll show you a couple of things that Avid does as a concept, as an idea, but these are two things that Avid does as a concept, as an idea that you can do. Okay, so we're going to go through these two buttons on the bottom here. And these two buttons right in the bottom are called step in and step out. And the way that this looks is we had this original video layer called BBBBB. It was this little clip here called BBB. We put a bunch of effects in here. So we put A in order, and now it's in order. We put the color effect on, and then we put the lighting effect on, and then we put the 60x9 mask on. We put those. So think of those like, the way I picture it is like sheets of paper on top of a video screen. So we had a video screen called video PBBBB. We put a color effect on here, and then we put a sheet of paper of a lightning effect, and then we put a 60x9 mask on top of there. Well, this is a nest now, and a nest is, you know, like a bird's nest. It's a bunch of things stuck together and kind of putting together into a fold. And so in here, we can step into this. When we step into this, we kind of go underneath the first layer. So we're here on the 60x9 mask. We can go underneath this first layer, and now we can see this. We can see the lightning. And we can see what the lightning is doing and how the lightning is working, and they're like so. Now, if we get scared of this, now this took this whole, guess what? My whole screen is gone now, and now I'm just looking at the B segment. I'm looking at this B segment on the timeline, and I'm just looking here. Well, if I get scared, I can step out. Now I'm back into the comp, so or back into the sequence. And so here, I can step in, I can see this there, and I can step out and see this. Okay, cool. Step in, step out, you get the idea. So I can step in and see kind of closer up there and see this. Now I'm only looking at the lightning and the color effect. What if I step underneath this layer as well? So I can step underneath there, and now I'm just looking at the color effect, no more lightning. So I'm kind of under the hood there. So I went under one hood, and then I went under the other hood there, you know, and now I'm closer there. And again, I can step out, and now I'm back to normal, but I can step in, be underneath here, show the layer underneath this, and then step under this other hood, and then I'm here. And then I can even step under the other hood and be back to the original video layer. And I could do something like, oh, I want to take this and I want to add a blur effect. So I'm going to go to image effects, and I'll do the blur effect. I'll drag the blur effect on here. Now I don't need to option drag this because this is the bottom layer. And so here, sorry, let me make sure this is bottom layer. Okay, yeah, this is the bottom layer here. Cool. And so here, we're back here to bottom layer, and we're going to go to blur effect and drag this on here. And I can add a blur effect. Now the blur effect, for example, needs some kind of a shape to make the blur. So we could blur out, you know, this kid's face here. We could blur out this kid's face and say, hey, we can't see this kid. We're not allowed to see him. We haven't been given permission to see him. So now he's blurred out. Cool. That's fantastic. That's amazing. So now when we step out, we can step out of the effect. And now we have the color effect on top of the blur effect. And we step out again, we can have this there. And then we go to hand and we have this like there. So if you needed to see the original raw source video, you know, you wanted to go underneath this, the lightning was in the way of this kid or something, and you wanted to do something special, or the lightning was in the way of the scene, and you didn't step underneath, You could step under, step in, and then get back to the original. Again, now we're back to the original source layer again. So now we have 4 layers on top of each other, but we're stepping in, and there. And we could say, okay, let's take this video. Let's grab all this video. So we'll mark this entire clip. And now we can go here and say, hey, let's grab another piece of video. And this would be a nice way to replace the video. So say, for example, you had some video that was like a placeholder with a bunch of different effects on it. And you said, oh, this is just a placeholder. I'm going to go back to B-roll, and we're going to grab some other piece of B-roll, maybe, I don't know, this shot here, or let's see, something I don't rarely use regularly. We're going to grab, I don't know, this shot here. And we're going to say, let's take this shot here, and let's put this shot inside here. So we'll just make sure we have several seconds here. We're going to grab this shot here, and we're going to overwrite this video onto this video. We won't bring the audio in. We'll just overwrite the video onto the video, and now we've replaced the video. Well, guess what? When we step out of here, I mean, we blurred out this person, which we could keep or not keep, so we could just remove this effect if we didn't want to blur this person out. And then we step out again. We're back to the color effect. We're back to the lightning. We're back to the purple bars. We kind of went under the hood in several occasions and then messed with what's under the hood. So this is a nice way if you don't want to see like all these effects and be like, hey, I don't know what effect I'm adjusting the keyframes for. I don't know what I'm adjusting. So is this adjusting the keyframes for the lightning? Is this adjusting the keyframes for the 16-minute eye mask? And it gets really confusing sometimes. Click on this and delete this. I can step in, and by stepping in, I can kind of just go back to original source layers, and I can even replace the source of the video beforehand and do some kind of conceptual things with this edit. But that is that whole process of doing that. Now, another way of working this, which is really, really weird. So we did this process of auto nesting, which was dragging the Alt key or the Option key and dragging effects on top of each other and just changing the order here, which we can do. Another option would be to step in, and we could step in. And this was a little bit older way to do this, but it works just the same. And it's a nice way to look at these different layers and see different things going on. And so that's the thing we can do. Another thing we can do is a thing called expanded nesting. Now, expanded nesting is weird. And it's actually the first way that I learned how to do any kind of nesting. But visually, it looks weird because it's kind of a little backwards, but I'm going to show it to you. And I'm going to show it to you because 9 times out of 10, people who discover it on Avid discover it by accident. So if you're on a clip that has a bunch of effects on it, you can double click on the effect. And when you double click the effect, it opens up this kind of drawer. So think of this as like a drawer, kind of like lean your computer screen back and think of this like a drawer, and it opens up and double click and it shows what's inside. So this is kind of a step down. So think of this as a step down. I know this is over top, which seems weird, but now we can step in here and step in there and then step in there. And so now it's this layer, step down into this layer, step down this layer, step down this layer. It's like almost like kind of we opened up like a shuffle fold of cards, and we're kind of just like showing you all the cards that are in play here, and you can have this here. I don't use this that often. I used to use this all the time, but I don't use this that often. You can double click again and close this expanded nest. But this is sometimes a nice way that you can see kind of how these timing line up and what's going on here, especially if you have multiple layers and multiple things in here and a bunch of other ideas going on. Some people really like this as a way of kind of seeing these all together and seeing these as separate different tracks that are kind of built into each other. So it's kind of just opening up and kind of pulling out all the pieces and kind of having them out there laid out on the table kind of idea. So with these nests, you have these ideas of what's called an expanded nest. It's a really strange thing, but it's kind of, it's a thing. It's a thing you can do. It's a thing that works as an idea, and you have them built in there like so. All right, so let's play a little bit more. Let's, we got some time. We're doing pretty well. So let's play a little bit more and let's talk about that. So again, you can step in, step out, you could expand and work that way. And you could still edit this way. You could still grab this and you could just patch this up to here and replace this with a different video and just, grab this video here and overwrite this with a different shot of maybe these kids. I think this was kids before, or I use this somewhere else, and you could say overwrite and then boom, and then do it that way. And again, this is now this shot laid out like this. So there's different ways of working. Avid doesn't really throw anything out, so they give you all those different options. Some people like to work one way, some people like to work a different way. You have these different variations of ways to work inside of Avid that do some different things. So let's play a little bit more. We're going to zoom out a little bit and we're going to play a little bit more. I'm going to show you some things you can do. So for example, there's an effect that is really common, that's really normal, that's in the image category called the Resize Effect. And the Resize Effect is kind of a really simple, basic way of adjusting an image. So we're going to take Fidel here and we're going to apply the Resize Effect to Fidel in there. And we can open this up and look at some of the controls. Now, I think argumentatively, I think, if this was Adobe Premiere or something, these are those effects that would kind of almost be built into the layer by default. And in some cases, I kind of wish it was, but this is Avid, so this is an effect you probably want to apply automatically to any layer you have that you intend to do any kind of thing for there. So we could say, oh, you know what? We don't like the headroom above Fidel here. We don't like this space above Fidel. It's too much headroom, and we're not really feeling that. So now we can go here to the scale control, and we can scale this up just a little bit. Maybe not too much. We're just going to scale this up to 115, make this a little bit bigger, and we can take the position and move this up on the y-axis up here and just have it over here. Whoops, up on the y-axis. Maybe up just a little bit. We're just going to move this back here and have this just up a little bit here. And we'll move this over in the x-axis to get more lead room here and have this here like so. Now we can only move this a little bit here. So we move this to that much. And now that's the new shot for Fidel. So that's the reframing of Fidel. That's there. And so now we have this shot framed out there and resized. Can we animate this? Yeah. A lot of times you're going to bring in, say, a still image or something, and you have a still image here. We could, for example, we could go on the internet here, for example, and we could say, let's look up minority male initiative conference. We could find a picture of the Minority Male Initiative Conference, and we have a still image. So we say we take this picture in here. Great. This is 720 by 216. That looks like the biggest one we're going to have. And we're going to take this, and we're going to open image new tab, and we're going to save this image as here. And we want to do this. We want to have this image because we have this, generic poster here. Save image as. We're going to save this to desktop. I know it's a weird place, but we're going to save it to desktop. Cool. And then we're going to bring this in. So we're going to go to bins. Maybe we'll go to our B-roll bin, or maybe we get a new bin. We'll call this new bin, I don't know, import pictures or something. Import pics. Cool. And so we're going to go to input source browser, and let's take a look. We'll go to input source browser. We'll go to desktop, and I have this minority male conference poster. Let's say, let's do import, and then under import, we want resize fit format raster, or maybe just image size, or do not resize smaller images. Yeah, we'll take like that. And then we'll say minority male, import, and we'll bring that in. And this is going to bring this picture of this minority male poster. So now here, while Fidel's talking about minority male initiative is going to be. So here he says.
So the minority male initiative is going to be a conference.
We want a little B-roll here. So we're going to drag this up to V2. And then right here, we're going to take this minority male initiative poster, which looks like this, which is a little bit small, right? It's a little bit small. And we're going to go here and say, let's add this in here. We're going to overwrite this on top and throw this on top here and have this like this.
Initiative is going to be a conference.
And that's kind of boring. I mean, let's be honest. That's kind of boring, right? That doesn't have
initiative is going to
much going on here. So now we want to say, okay, let's go in here and go to Effect Palette, go to Image Resize, and we'll scale this up a little bit. So we'll take this, we'll scale this up maybe up to here. So it kind of comes into there. And maybe we'll even scale in closer. Maybe we'll do like a scale closer and a position down. Just like here, and we'll do a little zoom out over time. We'll do like kind of a roll out here. So this will roll here. We'll add another keyframe. Have to add the keyframes. They don't automatically adjust. We'll bring this back to 0, and then we'll bring this down to about here. And now it's going to do a little animation like so to go from here, zoomed in,
conference,
and come out to there. So now we just have a little bit of life to this.
Initiative is going to be a conference that is really geared to.
Just a little bit of something. We could go to the beginning of this and add a dissolve, slash key or backslash key, add a dissolve here. A little quick dissolve at the beginning, just so it kind of fades in.
Initiative is going to be a conference.
Cool. A little dissolve at the end, maybe. Again, slash key, backslash key. A little quick dissolve, 12 frames. Doesn't be super long. And have this fade in.
Initiative is going to be a conference that is really geared toward.
Cool. And we could do something like that. So there's some things we could do. Could we have done the effect of the dissolves built into the effect? Yeah, there's probably inside here in the resize effect. There is there's a background, but we could do some things and we could adjust this accordingly. But we do have this control.
Initiative is going to
there.
be.
So the resize effect is used all the time, and you can do all kinds of resize effects. The resize effect is a relatively common trick and a relatively common effect that you can use for all kinds of purposes in all kinds of games or whatever you want to do. Just a common effect you want to show. I want to show a couple more effects just to show them as ideas and just to show them as concepts inside of some things we can do here. There is an effect here called color correction, and color correction effect is a weird idea of an effect. Now, let's talk about this, and I'm going to talk about this really simply. When I click here and I drag the color correction effect on here, it enables a color correction effect. And the color correction effect has some things we can control. It has some adjustments we can do, but this menu doesn't do much for us. And this really doesn't give us a lot of controls here. There's some base curve adjustments that you can turn on or turn off, but that doesn't help us at all. And there's base levels, which you can turn on the reds and stuff, but there's not really something we can really do here. So why does this effect exist? Okay. Here's the idea. If you go into advanced stuff and you start doing real color correction inside of Avid, and you start really exploring color correction, you can go to color mode. And so when you go to color mode, you can take a color mode and you can take this clip here. And this is whole color mode. We're not going to talk about this. I don't want to scare you. We're not going to get crazy into this. But here in this color mode, we can say, okay, we can take this clip and we can start to do some real color correction. And now you have your HSL controls, you have your channel controls, you have your levels controls, you have your curves, you have under your HSL controls, you have your hue offset controls. You can do all this stuff. It's a really robust color correction control that you have all kinds of things. You can bring up scopes, you can bring up vector scopes, and you can bring up, your parade, your RGB parade. You have all those controls there, and you can really learn about color correction inside of Avid. It's a really robust and really fantastic color correction thing, second only to maybe Blackmagic or DaVinci Resolve. And so you have those controls there. But you say, hey, Chad, I don't want to go into color correction. I don't want to do all those things. Well, let me show you an idea. If you were to go to here, you can apply color correction as an effect. So you can say, hey, I would like to apply color correction as an effect. And so when you apply color correction effect, I can take this video and I could say, I don't know, in the highlight areas, we could boost up the reds. And I'm just going to do something drastic, an option. And the mid-room areas, we can change the blues, and we can, on the dark areas, the shadow areas, we can make the greens, and then we can go into the curves and we can add some kind of a contrast curve there and make all kind. And yeah, that's amazing color correction we just added. We can do all those things if we really wanted to, and we can do that to a layer, and that's there. And that would add as an effect on the layer. So that actually added effect onto because video 2 was selected, that added effect onto the filler layer. And so we had the filler layer and add onto the filler layer, which we may not want to do. Let's undo that. Let's undo a whole bunch of what we just did there. Cool. And we'll go back to normal here. It's never back to normal here. We'll go back to here and we'll say on video 1 here, we'll turn off video 2 and we'll do the same thing. We'll do maybe curve, maybe this, and we'll do a bunch of this action here. And we'll drag this to purple and we'll drag this to red and we'll drag this. And because this says color correction effect right here, this has added a color correction effect. Okay, we don't want to do this. And we don't know anything about color correction. Color correction, we're really remedial at color correction. We're not good at color correction. We want something automatic. Well, there's two major color controls that you have here. You have what's called HSL controls, which are just hue offsets, and there's some controls there that are just things. And there's something here called curves. And so you can learn about curves, you can learn about HSL hue offsets, and they're fantastic. They're great. Well, under hue offsets, there's a whole section under here that says autocorrect, and there's auto balance, auto black, auto contrast, and auto white. And so you could go here and say, hey, I don't know anything about color correction, and I'm really terrified of color correction. This is really scary to me. I don't know what to do. Well, let me try the auto functions. And I go here and I say auto balance and see what it does. Let's take a look. Maybe it's great. It looks pretty balanced already, but maybe we'll try to auto balance it here. And it did a little shift there in the HSL auto balance. So we can do that again. We'll see the little shift here, auto balance. Yeah, a little bit of balance. Nothing much, but it did a little balance. Let's do auto contrast while we're here. Auto contrast, let's see what it does. It stretches the contrast a little bit. I'll undo and show it to you again. There we go. A minor adjustment. And we could have done that. So we could have done that there. We could also do that with curves. We could also go to curves and say auto balance. Well, that's more interesting. That did a more aggressive job there. And again, auto contrast. And so here we go auto contrast, and then boom, it stretches this there. So I don't know which one we like better. Do we like going here as an idea? Do we like going here into HSL and doing this, and then this? That was more mild. Curves did the same thing, just a little bit more aggressive. It's trying to use the computer to try to figure out what the adjustment should be. And we can go here and say adjust this and adjust this and say, okay, that's a little too much for me. Maybe I like the HSL better. I'm going to go with the HSL and go here and here. Now, if you want to, you can just watch this and you can go into here. You can go into color, go to HSL, go to hue offsets, and then adjust these guys. And you can do some auto color correction for you. That would do some auto color correction. We can turn this effect off, remove this effect. We can see the before and after. That's what it looks like before, undo, and that's what it looks like after. Yeah, that was mild there. But you don't want to go into this screen. This screen is scary. It's got too many buttons, too many knobs. It looks like a 747. It's really crazy, and it's not cool. And we're going to stick here, and we're going to go there. So I'm going to show you a trick. If you go to Effect Palette, and you go to Color Correction, it does nothing. It doesn't do anything. But here's the trick. If you go to Files and you go to Settings, Command-Shift-Equal, and here under the User Settings, if you go to User Settings, and here's a quick trick, you go to Correction Settings. There's a thing that says tabs, and a thing that says units, and a thing that says levels, and a thing that says features, and who cares? And there's a thing called autocorrect. And it says, when applying color correction from the effect palette, dragging this down and dragging this on here, perform the following operations. Do nothing. Well, of course, it does nothing. But there's a pull down here, which means maybe it can do something. So we're going to go HSL auto balance. And then do HSL auto contrast. And then you never have to, and then do nothing. Sure, that's good enough for us. And then you never have to go into this screen here ever again. You can just drag this down, and once you drag this down, this will do those adjustments. And again, maybe they're mild. And we can try them different places. We can say, hey, I wonder how this image looks. Let's do some HSL auto correction and clean this up, and boom. A little bit of contrast there. We could take Fidel here, which has some resize effect going on him. Let's go remove the resize effect here. We'll go bring Fidel back to where he was. And we can go to color correction, and when applying color correction, it did that. Boom. Little mild correction. The breakout room, the handing paper, we could do color correction. And again, we could do this whole thing where we said, grab this clip, any clip that you had some questions about, command click and grab multiple clips here. Oops, sorry, shift click and grab multiple clips here, and grab multiple clips here and say, hey, all these clips I want to color correct and make them all purposeful. You can do color correction, then double click, and it would color correct them all accordingly. Now, you don't want to do this on an upper layer. I know the temptation is, hey, Chad said you can make another video layer and drag this across the top of the upper video layer. You probably don't want to do that because that's not going to correct everything, and they're not all the same, right? So however they were shot, they weren't all shot the exact same way. And so the color correction will not necessarily apply to this video as it will to this video. Especially since that one has sepia on it. So I wouldn't apply something like color correction to across the board video effect, especially if it's doing auto correction in that vein. That's not the way to go. So we're going to turn on that video track and get rid of, sorry. Let's see, let's park on this and say up here, remove that effect, and it's cool. And so we have that there. Like so. Anyway, those are some things you can do, some tricks you can do with some of the color correction tools. Okay, so a few more things I wanted to mention about how segment tools work and some things I wanted to show you with some segment tools. Some of these are lesser known, but they are some interesting ideas. Now, one of the things we talked about is putting effects on this upper layer and having an effect like, I don't know, like maybe the film effects 60x9 mask on an upper layer up here and putting it right there and saying put 60x9 mask across the entire thing, which would put kind of bars across the whole thing. And so we'd have a separation of that or that, depending on what we're looking at there. So we'd have those separation there and having that kind of like an adjustment layer. And it says it's called this filler. Well, a thing I might not have talked about, let me just remove this for a second. Let me just make sure this track is selected and remove this. And we'll go here. We'll actually get rid of track video 3. I'm just going to click these tracks off and then just delete track video 3 and goodbye track. I'm going to hit the delete key and delete this track here. So just as an idea, we'll patch this back to video 1. But I do want to talk about this idea. There is something called filler. And so when it makes this filler, it's the space that's right here and it's right here. And Avid thinks about black as not just black. It thinks about it as a video clip. And if you go into the source menu or source monitor here, and in the source monitor, you can right click and choose load filler. And you can load in filler, and that loads in a bunch of seconds of blank space. So you could, mark an in point and then say plus 5 seconds and then out point. And then you could go to the beginning of this, maybe turn all the tracks on that you need, whole bunch of tracks, and then just say insert or splice in some filler. And you could bring some filler in and splice in some filler at the beginning. Or you could say, I don't know, between this part of clip and this other clip here, go right here, and in between these clips, we'll just command click to the cut point, mark an in point, and we could add in this 5 seconds of filler. So that's just, 2 minutes of blank space that you can add on wherever you need to, just however you need to put in up to 2 minutes of blank space. Obviously, you can trim it out to be longer than 2 minutes, but, you have it there. There's also a feature at the beginning of the timeline, or you don't even need to be at the beginning of the timeline, that you can right click, and it says somewhere in here, add filler at start. And so if you don't want to go to the menu or go to the monitor and go to load filler, you can actually add filler at start. And there's a setting to set the start filler duration. It's in the timeline settings, and we'll just add filler at the start. Defaults to 10 seconds, but it's a thing we can do. We can add filler. A weird thing about Avid, and I don't know, it's Avid being Avid. It's just a weird idea, is that if you go to the end, you can add filler to the end. So you can't go here and just decide that you're going to put filler, on the end of this clip. For some reason, it just doesn't want to let you do that. It just says no. Filler is supposed to fill in between segments, and so it doesn't let you put it on the end of the clip. It's really bizarre. It's a really thing. You just can't add blank space. You can add black if you want to grab a black clip and import it. You could add black, or if you want to grab a clip of, a card or something, you could grab anything and just add it onto the end there. You just can't add regular blank space onto the end. There are some tricks. There are some ways around that, but for an idea, you just can't. It just won't let you do it. If you put a single frame, of, say, we went and got, I don't know, poster here, and we just grabbed one frame, in point, out point, and grabbed a single frame like this, just a single frame of that, and we zoomed in all the way, you'd see this one single frame. As long as it was between two clips, you could go here, load filler, and you could add in filler between that section. And right there, you could add filler in between there. It would just end with this. As long as you had something there, it would be there. But again, the second you delete this, if you grab this clip and said in point, out point, and then said extract, boom, it goes away. It doesn't want you to add blank space. It says, hey, your sequence is done, hey, your sequence is done. What are you talking about? Extra space in the end. What for? Your video fantastic movie is done. It's done. And that's just a weird idea. It's just something about Avid. Other systems will let you add blank space on forever, and whatever it may be, but this says no. So if you want to do that, add a blank clip. There are some other ways around that, some tricky kind of under the hood ways, but that's pretty much how it is there. I want to show you a couple more things, a couple more ideas, just to play with them. We talked about the idea that if you click on clips, so if you use your segment tools and you click on a clip here and a clip here, shift click, grab these clips here, you could go and say, for example, grab the black and white or something, or there, or the purple bars, and say, put the purple bars on this entirely. And it would put purple bars on each of these there accordingly. Now, say, for example, you wanted to do something where, we'll just undo for a second. Say, for example, you wanted to add black and white, and you wanted this to drift to black and white. Well, these three clips in a row, it would have to go from full color to here, and then from here to here. This effect, if we went into effect mode, this effect would have to go from like full color to, I don't know, like 67% black and white. So this was, for example, this was like 0. This was in full color. And then by the time it got to the end, you would say, I don't know, it would go to like 66 something percent black and white. And the next clip, or maybe to 67, and the next clip would pick up at 67 or 66 and go down to 34. Whoops, sorry, negative 66, and be negative 66, and then at the end be down to 34. And that'd be a lot of work. That'd literally be just a whole bunch of work. We're going to undo a bunch, and I'm going to show you a loophole, a trick you can do. Whoops, sorry. Let me just Control R to redo there and have that there like there. And we're going to click on these three clips. And again, when in doubt, Avid does something really silly. There's a trick. You can hold down the Alt key, and the Alt key does a weird thing. It tries to put effect across all three of these. So it nests these three layers underneath one effect. And so you hold an Alt and double click. Now they have three of them selected with the segment tool selection. And then boom, it puts an effect on top of there. And then you could do one effect, and that effect could be, for example, go from black and white, maybe here as it goes into, we last see it, black and white, and then here, we start up from full color. And that would be an effect, a way to kind of manipulate the effect. We can even do more saturated, extra saturated, and then have it drift out to black and white over time, and that kind of idea. And it would drift across the three clips. You're seeing that there's three clips under here. One, clip A, clip B, and then ultimately clip C, and it drifts there. Now, you say, but Chad, I want to see the clips. I want to be able to trim the clips appropriately because now the trimming's off, the clips are not there. Well, guess what? I can park in this. I can step in, and I can see clip A, clip B, clip C, there like so, and I can step back out. Or, again, I could expand, double-click on this and expand, and I have my trim tools that I could trim this accordingly or whatever I want to do, or replace this clip with a different clip, put another clip in there. There's some tricks I can do and some ways I can work this to make it do what I want it to do. But that's just a trick. It's the Option key, the Alt key on a PC, to add one effect kind of over top of all of them and then have them separated out. There's some other ways to do that, but that's kind of a cool thing that you can do. So just wanted to show that to you as an idea. It's kind of a cool idea, some kind of a cool thing you can do. Explore, take advantage of it. It's a cool way to kind of mess with or play with different effects, doing things. So a few more things really quick. There is an option, and this is strange, but say, for example, the grown-up table. We take the grown-up table and we go here and we like this sepia tone. So we're going to go back to bins and we're going to go to Chad's Awesome Effects. And here we have the sepia already. But we want the sepia with this video. We're going to use this video again and again. This is a kind of our signature important video. This is something that we use all the time. Or say, for example, we have something like this minority male poster doing this animation. This might be a better example. We have this minority male poster doing this animation where it zooms out. And we're going to use this poster again and again and again there. We could go here and we could go into the effect editor and save the resize effect. And that would save the animation, but we'd have to keep bringing in the video there every single time. And that's a trick we could do. We could do that resize effect as an idea. But we're going to try something different. Again, when you want to do something different, what does Avid say? Avid says use the Option key, use the Alt key. Man, it does love the Alt key. And then we're going to hold the Alt key and we're going to drag over. And when we drag over like this way, what it does here is it does resize with source. And it says in small letters there, resize with SRC, resize with source. And now if we double click this, it loads up in the source monitor and we can see, whoops, I was on the wrong layer. Whoops, sorry. Let me make sure I'm on the right thing. Oops, see, I made a mistake. I make mistakes all the time. Sorry, let's do this again. Let's get rid of this because this is this Fidel resize, which is perfectly fine. We could keep this, but let's do this resize up here. Sorry, make sure I'm on the right one. So this is the resize. This is the animated resize of this animating in like there. Sorry, again, let's Alt drag. Let's pull that in there and then boom, resize with source. And now we have this as an animated thing that happens and we can plug that in anywhere else we want to. So we can, mark this clip and then bring this in however we want to and throw it down the timeline here. So for example, if we just want to use this again and again, and this would be a case of you want to keep, a video clip that you want to use on a regular basis and you want to resize it with source and some tricks like there. Just some cool things we can do. Just some ideas we can explore. Again, there are lots of effects you can explore. There's some cool effects. There's some really corny effects. You can explore them all. There's some effects, honestly, that I've been in this system that I've never played with, that I've never used. There's some other ideas there. We'll get into some time warp effects later on in future courses. We'll start playing with maybe some stabilize in future courses. We'll get into some other of these effects, and we'll start talking about the blend effects as we get into layering and compositing, which is there. Explore, have fun, use effects, but don't get seduced by the technology, A simple cut works wonderfully every time. A simple
and when there's an opportunity,
clip the way it is works
to bring
works fine. Maybe dissolve here, there, maybe a little image adjustment. If you want to make a crazy zany film or something, yeah, maybe you can do some crazy wacky effects, but don't get seduced by the technology. Just, have fun with it and explore. And, you can save and build an arsenal of Chad's Awesome Effects or whatever your name is. You can make your list of awesome effects. All right, that's it for us today. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in a future lesson.